You're listening to Bros Let's Talk.
Heyo, it's Bros Let's Talk. Pat here with Jimmy, Andy, and Anthony joining us again to continue our series on the A&E Biography series, WWE Legends. This week's episode, or we're actually doing 2 episodes this week because we're a week behind. We wanted to catch up. Before we jump in though, how you guys doing?
Couldn't be better.
Good. Especially after that doubleheader sweep on Tuesday. The Bandits are back, baby.
Back, baby.
Feeling good.
You probably
Feeling
noticed we skipped the Wet Bandits softball update last week for good reason. We wanted to wait until we had good news.
Yeah.
Bring you any news. So with that being said, we might as well just do the Wet Bandits softball update right off the bat after a tough opening week, which we just
got our
weren't
asses
ready.
kicked.
Spring training, we'll call it. That was spring training. We got our asses kicked.
A little warm-up game.
By a bunch of bozos in brown jerseys.
Bozos
Yes.
and brown jerseys. That's
Bozos and brown, I like it.
I like it.
Jabronis.
They're new.
Jabrownies.
The brownies.
Hey.
Also, we had 30, 40 mile an hour, maybe not 40.
Oh, it was
30
ridiculous.
mile an hour wind game 1. It was
bad, but we don't.
It was rough.
Excuses. We made.
No, we do not. We couldn't
made,
hit
What? Probably 10 errors
in the first
in
inning.
one.
At least.
It was pretty bad, but we bounced back. We had a doubleheader this week, including a redemption game against the Brown. What was it again? Brown.
Jabrownie.
Jabrownies.
The Brownie Bozos, whatever we call them.
We slaughtered the first team. I
Slaughtered the first team,
think they gave
And
up 2
then-
runs, maybe 3.
and then we almost slaughtered the Brown Jabronis.
But then it was a tight game.
Then it was a tight
Yes.
game. They came back towards the end. We tightened it up, got the doubleheader sweep. The Bandits are back. We're 2-1. Those are our first softball wins in 6 months?
A long time.
calculated, because we
Long
ended
time.
last season on a long losing streak.
Long losing.
And you know
streak.
what? We still have time before our young guns get back. So this is the beginning of something special, I think.
I'm pretty sure we had in our second game, in our redemption game, we had 2 double-digit innings where we scored 10 or more runs and then fouled it up by giving up 6 or 7 runs in the bottom of it.
And then going and that whole it was a weird I think it was a weird thing where it was we scored 10 in the first, went 3 up, 3 down in the second. Then we scored 5 or 6. I think we went 3. It was a weird.
It was we
other.
scored front
Yeah.
heavy and then we gave up runs back heavy.
Yeah.
But
It
the
was-
redemption game felt nice because in the first game of the season, we gave up 12 runs in the first inning and made probably 5 or 6 errors. And then we were the home team in the redemption game and we scored 11 runs in our first at bat in that game. So we gave them a taste of their own medicine. We kicked them right in the dick.
Right in the
Come out,
dicks.
you kick someone in the dick off the go, they're not going to come back from it. It's
Yeah,
just,
there's
And Tone, not only are you our resident wrestling historian, but apparently softball strategist. He texts me. I don't know if you text me or talk to me in the game. And you're like, hey, these guys are hitting a ridiculous amount of high pop-ups. Should we move to 3 outfielders and a short center?
Field.
No, I'm saying I don't know if he said it during the game or text me after. So same thing this time. These guys were hitting these monster pop-ups that just kept going over our infielders' heads and in front of our outfielders. And I had totally forgotten until you reminded me, hey, should we try this? So our last inning, we moved to 3 outfielders and a short center, and we didn't get out of it clean, but we
And
got
it
out
was
with a
still
win.
shaky as hell. And I was
Still
scared,
shaky as hell, but
yeah.
better.
Judge
it was weird. It was
fell
weird
over
because
a fly ball.
literally in 2 games of playing them, they batted 10. It was 10 righties, 1 lefty, and not a single one of them even pretended to go opposite.
Nope.
So it was all right, well, let's try to move it around, maybe do a 5 infielder situation. And then sure enough, we move, the first guy goes opposite. We're like, well, fuck, what do we do
Right.
now? And then we just kind of stuck with it. We
Stuck with it. And
on
I
the
mean,
last-
these guys, they had 2 really good bombs, back to back, but the rest of them were just high pop-ups that kept getting hit because we were either playing too deep or because we're at a point where it was going from light to dusk and it got super cloudy. And everyone on both teams kept saying picking up the ball at that point was extremely difficult.
Not joking. The transition time from when it's sundown it sucks. All of a sudden,
Yes.
it's like you're
And it's
dealing
like
with the
instant.
lights coming on too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Why
that
did
last
it-
inning, there was the pop up to third, and I looked straight up, and it was the first glance that I had at the lights
Yeah.
all
blinded.
year. And oh man, I forgot what that's
Yeah.
like. If you
Yep.
catch those right in your eyesight.
Yes,
It's tough.
sir.
And Andy has been
Ooh.
pretty lights out through
Well,
3 games, not only on the mound, but at the
Just-
dish. Just
Yep.
roping line
Big
drives
dick swinging.
like it's his job.
Little
Coming in,
little dinks out the left.
not even little dinks, dude.
No, they're
Hard
screamers.
Yeah,
dinkers,
you're
bro.
getting some good hits out there,
Hard
buddy.
dinkers. And then pitching good. Defense has gotten better from game 1, but still room
That's
for
for
improvement.
sure.
Room for improvement, but can only go up. Wet Bandits are on the rise, and I'm excited about it. I know you.
Yes, and we have an 8:30 game this week, and the team we play has scored 5 runs in 2 games.
Let's
so,
go. I'm gonna come.
and giving up 42. So we better come bring
Whatever you guys got to do to get up for the game. Personally, I'm at the stage in my life where it's like a coffee thing. If you got to, do a little.
I think it's going to be
Whatever.
a Riley's thing for me.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. Let's go before the game.
Right.
I'm
Yes.
actually not opposed to that. I would,
Riley's
I
at
would like some
7.
Riley's.
I'll send the text right now.
Do
Well,
it.
I
not
would
right
like
now.
some
Heating up.
Riley's food.
Team morale before the game.
Yes.
We'll all make handshakes with each other. It'll be fun.
Jimmy,
like-
I think, do you still have pull at Riley's? Like, you still know anyone there? Or
A little bit.
You should,
little
you should
bit,
try to
yeah.
see if they can do the cream of tortellini situation for the
All right.
soup.
I'll see what I can do.
See what you can do.
See what I can do. We have the menu set, Dick. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Sorry, Tone. Can't get it for you.
Hey, at least you tried, right?
Don't forget, there are 2 Riley's teams now all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we have an
Yeah.
in league rivalry.
That is going to be.
That
I-
should be that should be.
I'm
something
just.
that-
I hope someone says something.
okay.
throw it
Hope
the first
someone
guy.
says something.
Jimmy, here's what you do next year when you're talking to Uncle Steve about the sponsorship. Be like, we are in Tuesday C2. If anyone else asks you for sponsorship, ask them what league they are in. And if they say that league, tell them no,
Tell them no.
because there's only one Riley's league, and it's the Wet Band.
Although it does make
Riley's
for a
team.
cool like crosstown classic. It's like
Yeah.
an inner bar classic.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
I'm
who
just,
are these
all I can picture is like a straight up Roadhouse Rumble next time
Yes.
if we both show up at Riley's, like bar stools getting broken over people's backs and
I love that
beer
idea.
bottles to the face.
Probably more like West Side Story.
I
Throw Uncle
wish
Steve some
I
cash.
known about this earlier. I would have started growing my hair out months ago. The Sways didn't mess around in that movie, and I wouldn't plan on doing so either. All
No,
right?
he did not. He
Breaking
brought
bottles,
his
roundhouses.
medical records with him
I'm
every
murdering
time he'd go to a
I'm
bar.
straight up murdering people
Fantastic.
simply for the love of bouncing,
Yeah, I love it.
love of the game. That's what it was all about.
Sways, man.
All right, we're getting off track. We got stuff we do want to talk about. And episode 2 of A&E's WWE Biography Legends, whatever it's called. I keep botching the name. It's a long one. It focused on Roddy Piper, who, if I'm being honest, was a little bit ahead of my time. So going in, my expectation levels were, especially after the Steve Austin one, where I was just jacked up, because that was my prime viewing time, was when the Attitude Era. But then at the end of this one, I'm not going to say too much, but I was just blown away. I'm going to open the floor on this one because I think we all kind of feel the same way about it. But my favorite part about this was seeing how committed he was to just from the start. He came in, he knew who he was, and he just built up that character for his entire career. Whereas in the last episode, you saw Austin have to kind of switch gimmicks and find his way. Like Roddy Piper came in with this gimmick and just rode it to elite levels in WWF. It was awesome.
So I would say that I'm looking forward and was looking forward to all 8 of these episodes. This was probably the one second from the bottom that I was just like, okay, cool. Like I'm excited about this. But again, Pat, like you said, he's a little bit before our time. tone. We're not historians like you are. So I remember him more in his WCW days, like when they showed him getting his ass kicked by NWO. That's how I remember.
Leg. Yep.
Yes, that's
Same
how
thing.
I remember him. So I was like, I obviously excited, but not really into this one. And then within 10 minutes, you're like, Jesus. I mean, when you watch the Stone Cold one, there's a not slow buildup, but there's a buildup. And I feel this one, and at the end of the Roddy Piper, I had more appreciation for how it was done, because I feel like it matched his personality. Like, this came out with a bang, and you were like, boom, let's go. And after this was done, I felt like I could have cried at the end for just kind of how things ended for him. Yeah, and just going through. And it was so well done.
That last interview,
you didn't cry?
Could have cried.
I cried like a fucking baby.
Yeah, the last interview.
That last interview just tugged at your heart.
And you could see Rich Eisen's face was everybody watching that interview, just realizing what's going on, but also trying to be professional in the moment, but
also having no clue what's going on.
Right, but also kind of realizing that something's off. You know what I mean?
No, that's what I'm saying. You realize something's up, but you have no idea what it is.
So yeah, that was tough to see, and then just to hear how it all just kind of just died shortly after that was
days later, they said.
Yeah, sad. But I think you mentioned how you thought the character was like his personality. I actually thought his character was more of a reflection of his childhood and what he had to be growing up in order to survive, and then kind of being on the street. And it was actually I noticed a similar tone with Stone Cold's. Was that like desperation was like a really driving force. Like they had nothing, and this was their only opportunity. So they basically were just willing to sink everything they had into it. But the fact that he actually plays the bagpipes is so cool.
Yeah, very cool.
And such a cool spin on it, and the way that he was able to just.
I never knew that either.
Yeah, I didn't either.
And dude, is there a better town to be born in than Saskatoon, Saskatchewan?
Nope.
I mean, where are you from? Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. That's the best place you could say you're from. It looked like it was cold as hell and probably not enjoyable.
I'll go one step further to be able to say my name is Rodney Toombs from Saskatoon,
Saskatchewan. Oh my god,
that whole 5 minutes.
Mouthful.
5 minutes in the documentary where he plays the Mexican national anthem, as he calls it, in front of 20, felt like he epitomized what it means to be a villain and a heel, and he loved it. That took some balls to
and then
do
think
that.
Think about too, like who, like he was in a program at that time with the Guerreros, who were literally like Mexican wrestling.
Yeah, like
he's like, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go ahead and go out there and have everyone stand at attention and be completely silent for the Mexican national anthem, and then literally play La Cucaracha.
Song about a cockroach.
Is the biggest troll job I think in wrestling history. Is to be able to do that and then not even have the match. Like there wasn't even a main event. Like that was it.
What else I appreciated about him was his preparation and how. I mean, you hear Ric Flair on the mic, you hear The Rock on the mic, you hear Stone Cold on the mic. And again, I don't remember Roddy Piper on the mic, but seeing his promos and his shows was just, this dude was a magician with his words. I mean, just some incredible stuff. And his prep work was,
and the fact
my assumption is second to none.
Because the others that you mentioned, I'm sure a certain amount of prep work goes into it, but some of those guys seem to go off the dome a lot.
Sure.
Whereas he's got notebooks and notebooks of just one-liners that he's writing. And just like you said, he just has these ready to go. And that was actually one thing that he said always bothered him when people would like tell him, be like, oh, you just think of all this stuff like off the cuff. And he's like, no, put all this time and effort into this. Right. And like, he really was so dedicated to the craft and embraced the role of the heel. Probably
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah, as much as anybody
relished in it.
He knew what he was, and to see what hate that brought.
Oh my God, people hated him.
He got stabbed 3 times. He had to start wearing a leather
Kevlar lace
Kevlar
leather
vest.
jacket.
I mean, that's just crazy. But he loved it, and he thrived off of it, and the one thing I'd never realized about him, which is where I was like totally just sucked in, like this is amazing, was that basically without him, WrestleMania never exists.
Nope.
Because you needed
I didn't know that either.
somebody who was a good enough of a villain to stand toe to toe with Hulk, who was basically at the time just untouchable. He was the number one wrestler. Exactly. Yeah. So, and then seeing, his reaction to Mr. T being involved, and I don't know, it was also cool seeing Vince McMahon's mind churning and how all this stuff came together for him.
It's just kind of, I thought it was pretty crazy. A lot of wrestlers go through the cycle of, heel turned hero, and then maybe go back to heel or vice versa. He never really had like the glory of being like an appreciated hero.
Correct. Yeah.
He was just constant heel.
He had the comeback heel, like where he came back from injury and then oh shit, Roddy Piper's back. We have to cheer him for a little bit, but then you realize like, no, he's still a piece of shit. We hate him.
But yeah, to me, one of the cool aspects of that one too was also just seeing how the WWF came to form with, at the time in the 70s and 80s, this was all huge regionally. Like all these areas had their own wrestling federation.
Territories.
Yeah, territorial.
Yeah.
And then Vince McMahon was just kind of like, oh, let's go take the best people from all the big time, local territories that are the promotions that are being run, and let's do a national thing where they're exposed. But again, another common theme I think that showed up in this one from the first one was life on the road, and how seeing it in a little bit of a different life, whereas in the last one, Stone Cold was just so committed to his character and just his rise that he basically abandoned all life away from the road and just focused on life out on the road. Whereas where Roddy Piper had a family and loved his family, a good family man. And, they mentioned he would go to a hotel and wind down for a day before he would go home to his family, because he had to just, come get away from that character.
Yeah.
But then in showing that, also showing that, just shortly after being home, having anxiety to be back out on the road, and how it's just like, they're always one way or the other, either on the road fully committed to it, or when they're home, they're still kind of one foot out the door, still being here for the family. And just the nature of the business though, like they talked about, you could fall down the ranks if you miss
at any time.
It's exactly what it is. It's not like the FOMO situation, like fear of missing out, like the idea of, if I'm not there, somebody's going to take my spot. You know what I mean? Because you're in a situation where it's like, all right, if you're not at work, then we're still going to have a match. And if you're in a program or you're in a rivalry with someone, well, if someone goes out there and does it better than you, that's a huge issue, right? The big thing that the thing that I thought most about after watching this was like, and again, it's different from our time, right? He was ahead of our time, but like kind of the idea of like the underappreciation that he always had. And like, if you really think about it, like think about the time that he was in there. He was in there with Andre the Giant, Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, like Ricky Steamboat. Like he was with all of these huge guys, and no one ever really like puts Roddy Piper on that pedestal. Being as big of a heel as he was, he made a lot of those guys so much better in the situations that they were. Just gonna throw out a couple facts here. In the WWF, he was the Intercontinental Champion once, and he was a tag team champion with Ric Flair once. In WCW, he was the United States champion 3 times. That's it.
Wow.
Never held a world title. Never, he wasn't like an intercontinental title, perennial guy where he had it 2, 3, 4, 5 times. He won 2 titles in the WWF.
That seems like a massive oversight from creative to
yes,
literally have the heel that created WrestleMania, that rivalry with Hogan, and never give him at least one chance to hold the title and just run that storyline of, it's a good storyline when the villain holds the belt for a little bit and then Hulk gets it back and at SummerSlam or whatever.
Exactly. And the best part about it is that his personality, he was always doing what was best for business. He cared so much about wrestling, and they talked about it with the whole Mr. T thing. He's like, Mr. T was disrespecting wrestling. I'm not putting him over. I'm not letting him pin me because he doesn't care about wrestling.
And I don't blame him for that one bit.
But even that being said, just showing, like you said, he was the consummate professional, knowing what the premiere photo would be. And he had Mr. T lift him up over his head, as that's the photo that was used everywhere, and just still, not taking the pin, but still being a showman 100% of the time.
Yeah, he's not letting a Hollywood guy come in there and, get the nod. He was all about the business. He was all about doing what was best for business. He didn't give a shit if he lost every single one of his matches, but if it was telling the right story and it was doing the right thing, then absolutely. But you said it right, Jimmy. Like, throw the guy a bone, give him a title at, let him win a title at the Royal Rumble, or let him win a title at whatever, and then have him drop it to Hogan, or have him drop it to...
I feel like that might have been a product of the fact that he was a heel for so many different, like, high-level heroes. And the fact that he was just constantly moving between those as heel storylines, like, you never had... he definitely was prominent with Hulk and things like that, but... and this is just me kind of speculating, but he never held one of those heel jobs long enough with like one storyline that like made him complete his arc of going in and out.
It seemed like Vince McMahon specifically was pretty hell-bent on him just stirring the pot with across the whole federation. The Piper's Pit, and having his own talk show where he's basically just punching dudes after talking shit to them for 3 minutes so they can cut a promo. And to your point, I think they just kind of used him as the overall antagonist, to where, again, when we were watching more during the Attitude Era, they needed The Rock for Stone Cold because he needed that adversary to kind of go against. And Roddy Piper was just like the only really great heel that they had. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say only, but the best, agitator they had going.
So I think my favorite thing about this one, and I know, and they talked about it time and time again, and I kept picking it up as they would talk about it, was just how tough he actually was. And I'm sure as a wrestler, you knew when you had a match with him, you were going to take your licks and they were going to hurt, because I know like they pull their punches, but they were making some solid, loud contact constantly. Like he was not messing around with these guys.
The fuck out of each other.
Right. And he took it equally as he gave it, but those are some tough looking matches to watch, which is what people love. I mean, when you're there and you're in the nosebleed section and you hear him slap a guy in the chest, like all the way up there, that shit hurts.
And honestly, I'm a big, like back then, I feel like they were probably pulling 5% of their punches as opposed to the rest of them, making contact and wrestling snug. Like that's what they did. Like they knew that, certain guys were going to go in there, they were going to put you in a fucking headlock and they were going to squeeze your head and punch you in the head 3, 4, 5, 10 times, whatever. But they also knew that, like, depending on where you ranked on the list, like you were going to get that in return. You were going to get a receipt for that situation. So yeah, it was back then. It was, I mean, these guys were fighting. Just look at the coconut situation where
that was so funny.
Jimmy Snuka with the coconut for real.
And he shattered that thing. Yeah. He didn't just so the amount of force he had to have to bring a coconut over that dude's head.
Have you ever opened a coconut?
No. I've tried, couldn't do it.
I open it with a fucking ball peen hammer, and I'm smashing the thing. He hit someone over the face.
Dude, that's what I'm saying.
And it shattered.
It was cool seeing how he totally embraced that persona, and he worked it into the ring. They said he would bring like rolls of quarters or rolls of coins in the ring, that kind of stuff. And that's kind of like early on, like tea leaves, I guess, towards like, what the hardcore era, when they had the hardcore championship and stuff. And obviously there's like ECW where a lot of more extreme stuff happens, but that stuff being worked in, seeing it like worked in back then. And like you said, the coconut and just like really just like going over the top and then not really telling anyone because just feeling like they should kind of expect it because that's who he is. And that's the character.
I mean, I can't think of, and I'm not saying they don't exist. I just can't think off the top of my head of a person I hated in wrestling as much as people appear to have hated him.
No.
Like, I don't think that existed for us.
It didn't.
And the whole Attitude Era just kind of, everyone was like, fuck you.
I don't think that existed for us. Although wrestling fans were crazy back then.
I mean, but seeing like him walk down or when he would leave the ring or enter the ring and people, you could see the hate on their faces for him, throwing shit at him, giving him the finger. Like they
just
genuinely did not like him.
Like the little head cock thing too.
His walk. I think I sent the GIF in our little group chat of him just walking.
Well, when I cut that sound, it was just like his entrance video, and it's just like him one side, like in the background playing the bagpipes, and then just him doing the different walks, like at WrestleMania, and like, dude, he ate
that shit up.
It was awesome.
Could you imagine watching a television show and hating a person so much that you see them in person, you like you try to kill them,
right?
Because you hate them. Okay, my favorite part of that story is where he's like, he took his hand off, and every time his heart would beat, it would squirt out blood.
Well, my favorite part of that story was the fact that he wanted to
the guy afterwards.
He wanted to fight. Yeah, he wanted to fight the guy, and he's like, "What? Why?" He's like, "Because he stabbed me," and then he pulls the hand off, and his fucking blood squirting everywhere. It's like, no, you're going to the hospital. It's time to go.
Like, wild.
Yeah, that's
another
just wild.
Cool aspect of these documentaries is obviously an extreme circumstance there, but just kind of a sneak peek into how tough these guys really are.
Yes.
How much they really sacrifice their bodies. Like when they interviewed his daughter and talking about how when he was in WCW, Hollywood Hogan is hitting his scar for his hip replacement. And his daughter's just at home screaming at the TV because she sees him at home. He can barely walk. He probably goes there, hopped up on pills to get himself out there and just beating the crap out of the injury. And really just seeing how much these guys commit their lives to these storylines. Like it truly becomes a big part of who they
definitely are. More so back then than now because they had to sacrifice so much more of their bodies for that stuff. But
yes, agreed.
Also I thought it was a cool tidbit that they included when he kicked Cyndi Lauper.
Oh, that was so funny.
That was such a big deal because obviously, she's a woman, but like the biggest
pop star in the world.
And then they talked about how I don't know if that was planned when he came in and smashed the record over that guy's head or how much of that was planned, but they just talked about how when he came in, he totally just surprised everybody basically with the execution of how it went down. And it was that was just him though. Like we talked about the coconut. He didn't care if you were in the ring, you were part of the show.
Well, I think that too with the thing with Jimmy Snuka, I think there was like there was
bad
like
blood
big,
there.
Yeah, there was. I think they talked about it a little bit.
They had a big rivalry too, him and Jimmy Snuka and him and the Hulk.
Yeah,
but it was really cool to see how basically almost every maybe not almost, but a lot of heels since then, come from a lot of what he did as a character. Like people base their characters as a heel around what Roddy Piper did because he was maybe the best to ever do it. Or he was the first to do it to where you could commercialize it too. Like, I'm not going to lie. I kind of want to buy a Hot Rod shirt.
Yeah.
After watching that, those are sick.
So it's he had a lot of good quotes too that like.
Yeah. That's one thing I've got to talk about preparedness.
Yeah.
Got my notes here.
Yeah,
he's the one timer or the all timer in one liners. Like I didn't, you watch them and it's just all of this stuff. And the fact that it's just basically like we talked about, written out, just ready to go at any given moment. He just waiting.
So I also had no idea before that Ronda Rousey was such a fan of his, and two, that she got his blessing to use that name. I don't think I ever thought about it much like one way or another, but it does make me feel better that she cleared it with him first.
Yeah.
And that she used it in MMA because she was such a good fan and was trying to pay, homage to him. And it was a cool scene when she met his family. I think that was at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
It was super well done. So, I mean,
they did a great. They did a great job.
There's only been 3 up to this point, and as of right now, where it stands, if you only have time to watch one, I would recommend the Roddy Piper one. Yeah. Even if you have no idea who he is.
I mean, thought that was the most like thorough. I don't know how to explain it. Like the Stone Cold one got me pumped up because we grew up on Stone Cold.
Correct.
But I thought this was the best out of the 3 as far as showing the full picture of, the ups and downs and really detailed. I don't want to say life outside of the ring, but life while in the ring.
Yes.
I agree with you, Jim, that this was not necessarily my favorite, but I thought the best one.
Yeah, I mean, there were times where they were showing pictures of him like in the ring, and I was like, I don't know if I could have identified that that's Roddy Piper before this, because he doesn't have his plaid kilt on, his plaid trunks on. Like, I don't know if I could have identified him.
Always Sunny legend.
Well,
and now it's like,
I was going to mention that they could have threw an interview to like Dennis or someone.
They all apparently loved him on set.
Oh, for sure. Well, that's the thing. He was like as much of an asshole as he was in the ring and his persona. Like everyone always talked about how like good of a person, how down to earth, how very
just consummate professional.
Yeah. Just like a good human being. Yeah. He had his tough, he said it himself. If he didn't find wrestling, he'd be dead for sure.
Yeah.
And I want to say, because like I said, again, to bring up Stone Cold's podcast, I first started like learning about Roddy Piper from that in the interviews that he had. And if I'm not mistaken, he would talk about like a lot of abuse that he received as a kid. I don't know if it was just physical and sexual, or if it was just sexual abuse or vice versa, or whatever the case may be. But he talked about like how, again, that was what like his driving force was to get out of the situation that he was. The guy left home when he was 13, was on his own for, how long, and just so happens that he finds wrestling, he finds this profession, he essentially adopts all of that trauma and turns into, one of the biggest heels, but never like forgot where he came from. I don't want to ever abuse my kids growing up because of how I was abused when I grew up. And that was what he said. He's like, I'm never going to yell at my kids. I'm never going to raise my voice to them, because all it makes me do is remember what I went through and who I am now because of that. So it's like, he was a business first guy, or he was a family first guy, and then his business was separate. So like he put both of those things on such a high pedestal, but they were both so separate.
That's why I thought it was so interesting, because the other ones that we've seen is like the person has a trouble toying that line and becomes the character, and they don't really know how to shut it off. Where Roddy Piper just was who he needed to be to have this career, and could totally just step away and turn it off and be with his family. Where a lot of these people, they become the character outside of the ring as well. And then that's where it kind of toys the line. But it was really good. It was so good.
Think about how crazy, like he was running wild with Ric Flair.
Yep.
Right. Who was like the man. You know what I mean?
And like those two, that's got to be like one of the greatest tandems of all time, when those two are running on the mic in that Mid-Atlantic wrestling. It was just really cool to see. And then when the fact that he was 15 when he did his
first match.
And he looked even like he did. You know, they talked about how he was kind of small in stature, maybe compared to some of the other guys, because he wasn't doing a ton of steroids. But just to see even like that, you know, that's just a guy that's built for it. And a lot of these guys are just like, they're built for this.
Yep.
So yeah, definitely like that one got me excited to keep things rolling with this one, because like I said, going in, that was one I didn't think I would care about as much. And here I am thinking so far, my favorite of the bunch, or the one, like Andy said, like if you were going to watch one of them, like that would be probably the best one to suggest, to get a really full encompassing like picture of what being a wrestler is.
So
go ahead.
I was just going to say, before I even knew who Roddy Piper was, I first knew about him from my little prop that I'm going to show. And it is this. And it's a Hulk Hogan Rockin' Wrestling card game. And this thing is from 1985.
You still have the game?
Oh, yeah. So there were 4, like, I have no idea how to play this game. Me, my brother, sister, and dad play like our iteration of it on Christmas Eve every single year. And
really?
So here's one of the main characters, which is Roddy Piper. There's Hulk.
Oh my goodness.
Tito Santana.
Oh, yeah.
So good.
And the Iron Sheik.
Okay, so
and then
go ahead.
And then throughout, there were other cards that you could play, which were all wrestlers. Mr. Fuji. Fabulous Moolah.
Oh.
Nikolai Volkov.
Dude, the managers.
Big John Studd.
Ooh.
Big John
Studd. Hillbilly Jim.
Yes.
Wendy Richter.
Isn't that Matt Richter's mom's name?
Yeah. Jimmy Superfly Snuka. Junkyard Dog.
Whoa.
JYD.
And
Andre.
He takes up like 5/8 of that card.
Yeah, exactly. So all these guys, before I even like watched wrestling in the late 90s or whatever, I knew these names from this game that has been in my house since 1985. And it's just like sitting here. And again, I have no idea how to play the actual game. We just kind of came up with our own rules. And
you play it every Christmas Eve?
Pretty much, yeah.
Incredible. I think that's wild that we've been doing this show for 3 years and you're just telling us that now. Like, that's pretty cool.
So spoilers, we're planning on doing a live broadcast for our finale of this series at Anthony's house while he cooks us some delicious food. And
you should see the grill he has
outside.
Let me tell you.
Now, Andy, you have to bring that card game so we can play whatever iteration of that game that you play.
I'm glad you brought it up, because I didn't want to let the cat out of the bag. I didn't want to say anything because I didn't know like what the protocol was. But I'm glad you said that, because that was.
But eventually, we're gonna end this with a fun live episode. We're gonna eat delicious food. Now we're gonna play Hulk Hogan's.
Do we know what the final episode is?
Rockin' Wrestling card game.
Rockin' Wrestling, the final episode of this series.
Yes,
we're doing them every Sunday. So
no. I'm saying, do we know which character it is?
Oh. I don't know. Hopefully Bret Hart or Shawn Michaels. That would be just a good
I'm gonna guess Shawn Michaels.
Okay.
That's Anthony's got to be a top 5 favorite gift for you when Shawn Michaels.
That's number 1. And then also finding the one where Bret spits into his face now completes the what do you call it? I don't know what the fuck I'm thinking.
I know what you're saying.
You know.
So I'm super excited for them to talk about what's it called for Bret Hart? You know what I'm talking about? Yes, the Montreal Screwjob. I cannot wait to have them dive in.
Before, do you guys watch Vice or do you guys watch Dark Side of the Ring?
Have
you guys seen any of them?
I don't have Vice, so I can't watch them.
I gotta find a way to
I want to though. I've heard they're really good.
Those are.
We could figure that out and do another series.
Outstanding.
All right. Love documentaries. Before we jump ahead in these ones, though, we got episode 3 that we want to talk about as well.
Unjustifiably in a position that I'd rather not be in, but the cream will rise to the top. Oh, yeah.
Macho Man Randy Savage grew up in Downers Grove, Illinois.
I heard that they're putting a statue for him there soon. Yeah.
Really?
I heard that on the radio the other day.
Huh.
Oh, dude, if they do, we got to go take pictures. Okay, real quick, before we jump in, everyone, best Macho Man impression. We'll send this out. We'll have the masses vote on who has the best Macho Man impression. So, Jimmy, you're the lead impressionist on the show. You go first.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Nothing else, just the one line. Okay.
That's all I need.
I thought that's all we were doing there.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. We'll just do yes. Okay, that's fair.
I was gonna go with the Spider-Man line.
Oh, okay.
Oh, do you?
Come on, just do you.
You're going nowhere.
Oh yeah, the cream rising to the top, brother. Unjustifiably in a position I'd rather not be in, but the cream rises to the top. Oh yeah.
Well done.
Oh,
Well,
that's good.
clap all around.
Yeah,
Very
it was pretty
nicely
good.
done.
It's fine. Anyone can win that one.
Got
But
you for 3 minutes.
Documentary was as we talked about. You finished the Roddy Piper one feeling a certain type of way. You didn't
Finish
really
Macho Man feeling a different type of way.
Yeah. So also one of the great heels of the time period that he was in. Obviously, the one thing I notice is, I mentioned the cream of the crop. I've got the shirt on, but that's my favorite Macho Man cut. But Macho Man's cuts were hilarious because he was just coked out of his mind and acting like a moron. Whereas when we watch the Roddy Piper one, you see how prepared he was for everything, and everything was meticulous. And Randy was like that in the ring, which is the one thing that I really walked away from this respecting, was how committed and meticulous he was about what they did in the ring, and committed to the character. Anthony, you mentioned last episode, he didn't care. Macho Man didn't care if he lost every match, as long as it was a good match and put on a good show. That's all that he really cared about. Yeah. But we talked about before, this is one where it was just an example of not really being able to turn off the character and wondering what he's doing on these shows. What of it is emulated into his real life, or he couldn't find the line to figure out where to stop crossing over, and led to a lot of personal issues, I guess you would say, or personal problems, starting with having his wife Elizabeth included, basically, as his manager, and then just that weird dynamic that existed because of it. So I don't know, what were your guys overall thoughts on again, I thought it was really well done, covering a long ranging and him being a second generation wrestler. His dad was a wrestler as well. It wasn't I
did not know that piece.
Yeah, me either.
And this is the first one where it wasn't really he did this as a means of survival, as we saw with kind of Stone Cold and Roddy Piper, where actually I'm going to go out on a limb and say we should thank the Chicago White Sox, because without them cutting Randy Poffo, what is it?
Yep.
Then he never goes to wrestling and becomes Macho Man Randy Savage. So thank you, Chicago White Sox, for gifting us Macho Man Randy Savage to the world.
I thought the whole, it was just a different vibe than Roddy Piper, and
much different vibe.
And at the same time, I just it was much more high energy, because obviously Macho Man, and just mounds of coke. But at the same time, I felt just as sad watching that as I did the Roddy Piper one. For different reasons, because Pat, that was my biggest takeaway, is just the inability to turn it off. And I would have loved to see kind of more of during the Chicago White Sox time, kind of seeing what his normal personality was, because from that point forward there was nothing outside of Macho Man. like interviews, anything, moments, it was all that character. And I would have been really interested to see what he was like before that, more so.
So I remember when they did the 30 for 30 on Ric Flair, and we talked about it on this show, and we said nothing about that made me want to be a professional wrestler. Like, because he was always Ric Flair, always had a family, never saw him, was too interested in drinking and drugs and banging women and money, and you kind of got that feel in this one too. Like, yes, you glamorize them in the ring for 20 to 30 minutes as they're wrestling and their cuts and promos outside of it. But other than that, there's nothing glamorous about their lifestyle.
No.
And we've now, so in this one alone, we see Piper's dead. Macho Man's dead. We haven't seen Warrior yet, but he's dead. And Piper talked about it. He's like, I'm not going to live to be 65. And he died at, I think, 61. Like, there's nothing glamorous about this outside of their 15 minutes of fame each week in the ring. And I think this one really exemplified that.
And I thought the one thing that I did feel kind of bad about Macho Man for after watching this was obviously he had issues beyond the ring, but within the ring, his whole career was overshadowed by Hulk Hogan, while also helping build up Hulk Hogan to what he was with that kind of rivalry, but never really getting the opportunity or being seen as someone as the guy. And obviously something that kind of just like totally went over my head as we're younger. And Jimmy, as you mentioned before in the second episode where we remember Roddy Piper from WCW, it's kind of the same with Macho Man. Is when I was watching wrestling, Macho Man had moved to WCW, but just to see that he kind of was so small in stature compared to a lot I never realized that, because he's got big muscles, steroids and whatever, but just you never realize, when Hulk is 6'5" or whatever he is, or 6'7" maybe even. He's a big guy, and just
Scott Hall's like 6'8".
What do you think? Macho Man was probably like 5'11", like maybe 6 feet tall. Like he was just
I'd say probably 6 foot.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because you have this image built up of him where a lot of shots are like zoomed in from the chest up. So you just see him standing next to like the announcers.
Yeah.
And you just kind of have this larger than life idea of him. And you always kind of think like, oh, he's probably like 6'4", 6'5", but then you see him truly next to some of the bigger guys. And yeah, it was kind of wild. Like Pat, like you just said, I never took into account the fact that he was that much smaller than everyone.
Well,
they have him at 6, like they say 6'1". Yeah. But no, you are right. Like every promo that he did, it was chest up, and he had a great physique.
Yeah, for sure.
He had the triangle body, like he had the big chest and the big lats and all that. But no, you are right. Like everything was like kind of done at an angle. It was done chest up, like, and think about who you're going up against. You're going up against Hogan, who's a beast. You go against, the Warrior, who's a beast. The person that he had the best rivalry with, they were the same size, him and Steamboat. And I mean, look what they were able to accomplish. And,
that was a really cool part of the episode when they focused on his WrestleMania 3 match.
Crazy.
Ricky Steamboat, and just seeing, like, for anybody out there who wants to trash and make fun of wrestling because it's all pre-planned and choreographed, right. I challenge you to watch this 5-10 minute segment they had within this episode about their match for the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania 3. 160 steps, all planned out and memorized. And again, I actually went and watched the match on YouTube after.
Incredible.
After I watched it, and it is incredible. It's just like they're out there, and it's not just like little, like, planned 160 moves, 48 of them are headlocks or something like that. Like, it starts out with a headlock, and from there it's just hit the gas. They're throwing each other into the turnbuckles. They're jumping off the turnbuckles. I mean, throwing each other out of the ring. Really high flying, high intensity. Two really good athletic wrestlers just at their peak, going toe to toe. And it's considered one of the best matches of all time. When you watch it, you're like, wow, when you think of it, wrestling is a form of art. It's a weird way to put it because, it's all these, but that is like maybe the purest form of it you can find, to watch for someone who
probably second best choreographed match to mine and yours.
Oh yeah, which I was literally.
We have video. We have video of this.
Okay,
so we've talked about it.
I meant to text you earlier, Jim. I literally was going to text you and say we need to pick a day coming up where we take all those videos from Mom's closet and a VCR, and we find that video. And we
did we figure out you had the thing we can play it in? Like you have that VHS? Okay, so perfect. And Mom and Dad still have a VCR.
Okay. You guys, oh my!
We have to find this before we do our final show live with the four of us.
So we got to get together.
We can debut it.
Soonish. Okay, tomorrow tomorrow when we go to Mom and Dad's, let's collect the videos. We'll pick a day. We'll try and see if we can just find it based on label, which we've probably done, but we'll try again. And then we'll find this, guys. I mean, this had everything. It had entrances. It had storyline.
Legendary
Dad
commentary.
did all the camera work.
Dad was the best. He produced it. He was the videographer and he was the commentator.
There's broken tables. There's a little bit of everything. We move around from outside to inside,
back to outside.
We both roll up in a Ford Bronco. It's
the same Ford Bronco.
Yeah, because we're partners, and then Pat turns heel on me.
There's layers to this. Okay, it's great. Okay, we're definitely gonna find this video and we're gonna show it and we're gonna post it.
We've been talking about this for 3 years. We have to find it and debut it now.
And then I'm also gonna find the video where I broke the trampoline playing slam ball. Also in those somewhere.
That is another good one. So then what we can do after we find it, we can show the original, and then Anthony and Andy, you can be JR and King and give new commentator on it. I think that would be fantastic.
Also, just a little side note, it was kind of cool seeing in this one, I had this on my notes. I forgot to flip pages. Personal friend, Jerry the King Lawler, was a big part of Macho Man's. I say personal friend because I'm gonna put this picture up on the screen right here. Wait,
him and Pat are cool.
Here, put it right here. There, I
Done.
totally got flipped backwards. But yeah, I met Jerry Lawler in Miami, and then later on at the pool when I had a couple drinks in me, I went to offer him a beer, and he said he doesn't drink anymore, so he let me buy one for his 23-year-old fiance.
Good for him.
And I
solid move.
Talked to him for like a minute, and then I was like, "All right, well, I guess I'll just go then." He's like, "All right, see you later." I was like, "All right."
So Tone, I talked last week. You have to share your your two encounters.
So encounter number one, I am walking, and this is the same trip. I'm walking, escalating down the escalator, and escalating up the escalator next to me, I see this guy that I'm just like, wait a minute, like that he looks very, very familiar. Like you can see his face, you can see like how fucking I know this guy. However, there was a couple things that were a little bit off. Okay, the guy first off was wearing a day goatee, had the arm tattoos, he had the full sleeves, everything's good, but he had white, it was a buzz cut, white hair. So I'm like, that's interesting. And he definitely wasn't 6'11" as he's billed. So I'm constantly going back and forth. I'm like, was that the Undertaker? Because I'm pretty sure it was the Undertaker. So it's eating me up the rest of the time that I'm there. And I finally start looking up. And the one thing that I did, I turned and I looked and I saw the back of his neck, and he has a very distinct tattoo on the back of his neck. So I'm like, all right, I'm looking up Undertaker tattoos. Sure enough, the actual Undertaker has the same fucking tattoo on his neck. And I'm like, clearly that was the Undertaker. So I did a little bit more research. I did a little bit more digging. And apparently he had broken his orbital. It was when he re-cracked his orbital floor. So he was out of action. So now I'm like, okay, well, clearly the Undertaker doesn't grow his hair out and dye it black when he's not in action. So sure enough, he shaved his head. He's completely white hair. And that was my opportunity to see the Undertaker, shake his hand or whatever. Gets worse. So I'm in the casino. This is like 2 days later. I'm in the casino. It's like 3 a.m. and it's me and my cousin, nobody else around. Okay. It's very, very non-busy. So I look down and I see probably 250 yards away, a guy walking towards me in a teal suit, walking exactly like he would walk down the aisle with No Chance in Hell playing in the background. And sure enough, it's Vincent Kennedy McMahon. And this guy walks past, all the way past where I was, and literally all I could do is just one of these where I turn and I'm like, that was it. He waved back. That was the end of it. And that was literally all I could do. Now,
what a loser.
Correct.
Good.
So here's another thing though. I am not like a star. Like, I wouldn't call that me being starstruck. I call that me being like, what can I possibly say to Vince McMahon that he hasn't heard before, that he, you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
I guess in my big regret is to not just be like, hey man, I really like to shake your hand. Like, thank you for my childhood. Like, that's kind of what, and I'm always like, when I'm walking around, when I think about the story, I'm like, here's what I could have said, or here's what I could have done. But yeah, I mean, at least he acknowledged me. At least he gave me like a little head nod back. But I mean, he literally walking down the casino just like that, and in like a teal suit. I'm like, holy fuck! And as soon as I saw him, I'm like, that's Vince McMahon. My cousin's like, who are you? Who? I'm like, Vince McMahon. Just don't worry about it. And he walks back, and it was just him and some other guy, just like some random older guy. I'm like, oh,
it's the same weekend.
Same weekend. Same exact weekend.
Damn.
Undertaker and Vince McMahon. I didn't say anything to either of them.
There was an event going on or something, I'm assuming.
There had to have been. Hold on,
So that was the thing. Like, when I was there was Comic-Con going on. And it was kind of the same thing where I saw him and no one else was excited. And I was like, holy shit, it's Jerry Lawler. And everyone's just like, there's like 4 of us down there. Like, who? Like the King, Jerry Lawler. They're like, I don't know who that is. And I was like, should I say something? And Alyssa's like, sure. So I had this moment where I was just like, this is it. What do I do? And when I went up to him, it was kind of like,
puppies.
He's
like, what?
Excuse me, Jerry. And he turned around and he's kind of like, and I was like, I'm a huge fan. Like, I grew up watching wrestling. You were the best. You and JR are my favorite, blah, blah, blah. So he was like, he smiled and was like, all right, I'll take a picture. So he took her around and I was like, thanks, Jerry. And I kept just calling him Jerry. I was like, I don't know. Why am I not calling him the King? What is going on?
Mr. the King. It's so nice to meet you, Mr. the King.
I was totally in my head too. It's a weird thing.
Okay. And I'm glad you brought that up, because we used to go to Bourbonnais every year or every other year, whatever, and watch, Bears training camp. And you'd see these grown ass men and be like, Mr. Urlacher, can I have your autograph? And you'd be like, dude, be an adult. Like, act like you've been here. So calling him Jerry, Jerry, in my opinion, is the move. If you're like, hey, Mr. Lawler, like, I don't know, that just sounds weird.
Yeah, that's why, like, to me, like, what'd you say?
No, I said man to man. What up, Jerry?
Yeah. What up, Jer?
Right, exactly. And that's like my big thing too. Like, I've seen some A-list celebrities like just at the airport or, here, there, whatever. And like, I've never, like, to me, it's never been one of those things where I want to bother this person. Cause guess what? I don't want to be at the fucking airport. I'm sure this person doesn't want to be at the airport. Like, he's flying under the radar.
Right.
So it kills me because of the situation that it was, where it was literally just 4 people in the casino other than the dealers, and he walks right past. Like, be a man, go up to him and say, hey, Vince, let me shake your hand, buddy.
Right.
That's how I've been anytime I've had brush-ins with celebrities. Is my big thing is that I don't want to inconvenience them by any means.
100% what it is.
Right. And so I don't think I've ever gotten a picture with anybody that I've bumped into, but I have like gone out of my way to like either shake their hand or just say like, what's up? Thanks for doing whatever you're doing or whatever.
Yep.
I saw Bill Walton in Vegas right after the Grateful Dead show. And I walked up to Bill Walton, shook his hand. I was like, Bill, how was the show? He goes, it was an experience, man. And then just walked away. It was like the most Bill Walton thing I've ever seen. It was incredible.
Amazing. See,
that's
I feel
awesome.
like you got to you're right. Depending on situation, like airport's a tough one, but to me, it was Jerry Lawler was staying at the same hotel I was staying at, and it turned into a budding friendship. We took a picture.
Sure.
There was three other encounters, 2 waves, and a beer purchase for his fiance. He told me he was there for Comic-Con. He's like, you guys should swing by if you got nothing going on. We're best friends. You never know what comes out of it. So I always
probably told the security detail to be on the lookout for you.
Yeah, right.
You just never know what's going to come out of it, guys. So just always go say hi. We also saw 2 characters from The Office later on that weekend. It was I don't watch The Office like religiously, so the one Mexican guy,
Oscar.
Yeah, and then the redheaded lady,
Meredith.
Like smaller characters, but they were all there for Comic-Con.
Oh, okay.
I was there, and Sean saw them, so we like said hi to them, and it was kind of because no one recognized them. It's not like when the King's walking through, and I saw AJ Soprano, who was hammered, get thrown off of a blackjack table because he was being a belligerent idiot.
That's incredible because he is probably my number 1 most hated character.
TV
show ever.
Yeah. Yes. I have to watch that. Sorry, guys.
I saw Darius Miles. You're not a Soprano fan?
He's like, I lived it.
Nope.
I lived
it. My favorite episode of The Sopranos was the episode that everyone hated the most, and that was the finale.
And
and not because it was the end, because it was, I thought, the best.
It was very well done.
Yeah.
Jim, you forgot about a very important star encounter that we had back in
Rick Nash
2004. Kevin
Nash. Yeah.
Nash.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just talking about my Vegas encounters.
Oh,
Kevin Nash
at Universal Studios.
At Universal Studios, and
took a picture with him. He was
legit 7 foot tall.
That was the other thing about Undertaker.
He's legit
I did mention that. No, the other thing about the Undertaker that I thought was a red flag was that he was not with who his wife was
Kane.
at the time. Paul Bear. He did not have an urn. He was not walking with an urn. No, his wife at the time, it was not her. It didn't look like her. So I'm like, okay,
wife at the time and not anymore, right?
Yeah. Yes, I think it was Sarah was his wife's name at the time.
And she spells it wrong, by the way. There's no H. But what if he was with his sister?
Could have been.
Who knows?
Well, either way, I fucked up. I didn't say hello. I didn't roll my eyes in the back of my head or ask him to choke slam me. So, but back then,
Mr. Taker, can you choke slam me as you go up the escalator and I go down?
Can you choke slam me?
But keep in mind too, he was also still very kayfabe back then. So he's the type of guy that I feel like.
Remember when he went American Badass for like a year and a half?
We try not to.
He just rode a motorcycle.
Love the American Badass.
I just imagine him busting into the creative room. What if I just wore a Canadian tuxedo and an American flag bandana and rode a motorcycle down? They're like, kind of like the dead. I'm doing it. Play American Badass by Kid Rock as I go down. He just rides the motor. Hey, Mia. Whew. Okay, we're gonna finish up here.
I will.
Go ahead. No. I want to hear what you want to say. I want to hear it.
Because it'll be. I will say that the American Badass character did produce one of the best variations of the powerbomb in wrestling history. The Last Ride was phenomenal.
Last Ride was a good move. And when I played SmackDown, that was my favorite finishing move.
That's very good. See, this is why you're the resident historian.
Well, every now and then I get a nugget of truth.
Whew. All right, we're going to finish up here since both of these episodes focused on heels. Anthony's going to give us his top 5 heels of all time.
All right. So I was mulling this over a little bit.
In order?
No, I can't do it. I'm going to do a weird.
I got it.
I'm going to do a weird in order type thing that it might get a lot of heat for it. So the bottom 2, 4 and 5 in any order, I would have to say would be Savage and that's tough. Savage and Piper, only because I'm going to go Savage and Piper only because, again, they were ahead of my time. Okay. They obviously, a lot of people can say that. Yeah. A lot of people can say that, what do you call it? That Roddy Piper was like the number one guy simply because he, was one of the most hated human beings on the planet when he was, running wild. So I'd say those two down there are going to be my interchangeable 4 or 5. And then my interchangeable 1, 2, and 3, I have Ric Flair. I have Randy Orton, which is a controversial pick because, again, he was a little bit later than my time, but he's one of the best heels ever. And then I put Mr. McMahon and Austin kind of like as like a tandem together because I feel like the Mr. McMahon character when with Stone Cold Steve Austin is the best heel ever. Mm-hmm. So those are my interchangeable 1, 2, and 3. I sent, there's Mia. Hi, Mia. I sent my original list to my neighbor, and he started getting into my head a little bit because my original list I had Orton, Triple H, Piper, Mr. McMahon / Austin, and I had Hogan as well. So I took Hogan out and replaced him with Ric Flair, and I replaced Triple H with Randy Savage. The reason I replaced Hogan with Flair was because I think Hogan's heel situation was like a one-off. I think that was the best heel turn ever.
He is as a baby face for sure.
Yeah. So, but I mean, that was like that NWO Hogan for as long as it was absolutely remarkable. But then,
you bring up Hulk. How great was that shirt that he wore in the
that shirt
Roddy Piper interview where it's him, but
half
it's like
NWO.
It was like Hulk.
Yeah.
NWO.
Oh, I might not have noticed that.
Ooh,
yeah, it was pretty sweet.
Good shirt. It's just hilarious wearing a shirt with himself on it. But
right.
That's such a Hulk move.
It's always everyone stuff. Yeah, I'm sure all those guys only wear their own stuff. I guess I would too.
Naturally.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna start making my own clothes.
Here's another thing now that you mentioned that, and we were also talking about your boy Jerry the King. Again, to revert to that treasure. He was the main star of the Greatest Treasures, and he wears like Ed Hardy shirts that are Jerry the King Lawler. So it's like the Ed Hardy design, like all the fiery
Jerry
stuff,
Lawler
and it says Jerry the King on it. It's like
that's amazing.
What is happening right now? But yes, going back to Orton real quick, Randy Orton, he was one of the, like, I didn't like Randy Orton because he was kind of like the next generation and like the next big thing after all of our guys or a lot of our guys started, going away. So I never really like appreciated him. But watching some of his documentaries and watching like what he's done in his time of being there and like how long he's I mean, he's won the championship 14 times. So obviously he's doing something right. And he's still one of the best heels out there right now. So he, with his whole
he's
legend,
an interesting one where he's definitely got a following of people that love him
for sure.
Like,
yeah,
not the most hated, but like
certain people might be controversial, but people that have been following like in the last decade would probably back you up on this. I think.
Yeah. Oh, without question. And honestly, I think that when it's all said and done, because he has the mic, he obviously has the physical and athleticism. He has the promos. He has
good finisher.
Again that mean streak. But yeah. And honestly, like he right now, like with the exception of Roman Reigns, like Roman Reigns is a big time heel right now, and he's actually. Oh, can you hear me or no?
Yeah.
Okay, so Roman Reigns is like a big time heel right now, but like with the exception of a couple guys, like Randy Orton is still like a traditional heel.
Mm-hmm.
Like where he'll turn his back on the good guy and like make you like, come on, Randy, like we kind of like you for a little bit now. You just RKO'd your partner and everyone's mad at you again. Like he's always had that constant thing where you could like never trust him. He's the Viper. Like I've started to gain a lot of respect for him over the years, and I feel like it would have done this list a disservice if he was not on there, because he's
especially considering, like you said, seeing like really the commitment that you have to be a heel character is like you have to be committed to not only probably, losing some matches, but being hated by the fan base, which is like not an easy thing to do when you're going out and performing in front of sold out arenas every, 3-4 nights a week, whatever it is now. And one other thing I wanted to mention too before we close that I forgot when we were talking about Roddy Piper is I thought it was cool seeing how he was kind of the first wrestler to transcend Hollywood, albeit
I didn't know that either.
With like the shitty sci-fi like cult movie, but just seeing that he was the first one to kind of try to make that move, and then how we've seen that play out since then, where Hulk Hogan went in Hollywood for a while, and then obviously The Rock has been the most successful to do it, but he kind of paved that path for there to be some crossover there. Although at that time, like they mentioned, there was just no opportunity for their time-wise to be, to do both, because you were just on the road traveling all the time, always had to go to the next place.
But also think about who your competition would have been at that time. Arnold.
Right, exactly.
Like
bodybuilder.
Van Damme, like, you know what I mean? You're not
biggest action heroes of all time, or like in their peak. So that's a good point. And obviously Hulk Hogan never really turned into like a budding action hero. He did some stuff, but Thunder in Paradise got robbed at the Oscars, but
as did Mr. Nanny and Suburban Commando.
Other than that, okay, so next week, Tone's gonna be back. We're gonna be talking about Booker T, I believe, is the next. Again, someone the most familiar I am with Booker T is him getting his butt kicked by Stone Cold
in the grocery store.
But I'm excited to kind of see. It seems like there'll be a lot of. He had a lot of influence for young black wrestlers growing up, so it'll be kind of.
I'll tell you right now, just from the little bit that I know about his history, be ready for some
tears,
a messed up childhood.
Okay,
for sure. That's
another one of those survival stories, more so.
Oh yeah, big time.
All right, but that's all we've got for this week's episode. We appreciate all of our condiments out there who listen. If you don't already, follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, @Bros Let's Talk. You can subscribe to our podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, pretty much anywhere your podcasts are carried. Our website is broslet'stalk.com, and the podcast lives at anchor.fm/broslet'stalk. For Jimmy, Andy, Anthony, this is Pat. Later, dudes.
See ya.
Ooh, yeah.